as promised, as Bill, Mr. Nile Gardiner joins me in the studio, former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, now top-notch foreign affairs wonk, shall we say, over in Washington, D.C. Now tell me about what is going on in America, because it's tempting to look at Trump's approach to immigration and say we need a bit of that. How are things working over there?
Well, I think, well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on the show, Alex. Great to see you. I do think that Trump has been extremely successful with regard to border security, dealing with the whole issue of illegal migration. In fact, illegal border crossings into the United States have actually fallen around 95% actually under the Trump presidency. So a huge contrast to the open borders Joe Biden presidency, under which 10 million illegal migrants crossed into the United States. And most of those illegals are actually still in the US, but Trump is determined to send as many back as possible. And around 250,000 illegals have already been deported by the Trump presidency. So that's a very strong start. And my former Heritage colleague, Tom Homan, is the border czar in the United States. He's overseeing the whole border security deportation program, and it's a great start. And certainly I think the UK should be emulating what Trump is doing in the United States, securing the border, defending American sovereignty, and sending a clear message to illegals that if they try to come into the United States, they are not going to be allowed to do so, and illegals in the US will be ultimately deported.
Do you think we've got the mechanism to be able to do that in Europe, given we're bound up by various bits of legislation, given that when you look at the continent of Europe, it's sort of a bit bigger, but let's say equivalent to the United States of America, and so actually so much of our problems here, we get downstream from other countries in Europe with their open borders, and that you've then got all these people crossing over the channel into Dover. The French aren't doing much to help us.
The French have been absolutely useless. In fact, I think Macron is actively, deporting illegal migrants from France to the UK. And Keir Starmer is so cowardly and weak-kneed that he's not standing up to the French here. It's an absolute outrage. And of course, Britain needs to get out of all of these useless international conventions and really leave, of course, European courts that suppress British national sovereignty and self-determination. Donald Trump doesn't care about international courts. He cares about the sovereignty of the United States of America and defending America's borders. This is what the British government should be doing with regard to British borders, but we've got a Labour government that is cowardly, useless, and bows down, of course, to the European Union, kowtows even to the French. And that's utterly pathetic and humiliating, I think, for Britain.
I mean, does Trump need to have agreements with other countries to deport people back to them? Because we always say, well, we haven't got a deportation agreement, and if we're going to do that, that means we've got to make friends with the Taliban and give them some money if we're going to send people back to Afghanistan. How is he doing this when it comes to people from countries that might not have a cosy relationship with America? Yeah,
well, he's negotiating, of course, a series of agreements with countries across the world, including African nations, actually, to take illegal migrants, but he's also, of course, sending back to their own countries of origin large numbers of illegals. So basically, the US administration is being very proactive in terms of ensuring that they can get rid of the worst of the worst. And just this week, the Trump administration announced that they're sending several extremely nasty illegal migrants, rapists, murderers, off to Eswatini, which formerly is known as Swaziland. And Swaziland has negotiated a deal with the United States to take these monstrous criminals, actually. So this is just the beginning.
Oh, what, they're going to be put in prisons or something in Eswatini?
I presume so.
So one assumes this doesn't fall into line with what the UN thinks America should do or how they should act.
I don't think President Trump cares one bit what the United Nations.
So I mean, this is what I've always said. You can break international law. It's not like there's some sort of international law jail where they're going to stick Donald Trump for saying we're not going to actually abide by the parameters of this particular treaty.
The US president represents the American people, and the United States is sovereign. It doesn't bow down to any international court. It doesn't bow down to the UN. President Trump is accountable to the American people. The vast majority of Americans want to see the deportation of illegal migrants from the United States. So this is a very popular policy, and this is a US administration that does what is in the interests of the American people. At the end of the day, That's what a US president should be doing. In contrast, of course, to Joe Biden, who was hugely ineffective and weak. Trump is a very strong leader.
There has been a backlash, though. We saw the massive protests in LA that sort of, looked like they were going to tip over into violence, all the usual lefty do-gooders creating roadblocks and things like that. Has that settled down now? Is Tom Homan able to get on with his job without too many of these people kicking off? Yeah, so of course you're seeing, the woke lefty protests, some of which are quite violent, actually, against immigration enforcement officials. But we are seeing the Trump administration applying significant force, actually, to ensure... Using the National Guard at one point, using the National Guard. Governor Newsom in California was like, you can't do that. And he said, I will. Even federal troops to enforce American law. The rule of law really matters. And so immigration officials are able to carry out the work even in Los Angeles with pockets of neighbours with huge numbers of illegal migrants, actually. And so there are no-go areas in the United States in terms of immigration enforcement. This is a presidency that is determined to enforce the rule of law. I want to talk about the way that America perceives Europe, because there's this big tariff war going on at the moment. Europe sort of thought it could stretch things out, use its usual sort of behemoth bureaucratic nonsense to maybe put in retaliatory measures or actually make Donald Trump climb down. He just keeps upping the ante. And I wonder how much of this is tied to the perception of Europe by both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Because when it was the Munich Security Conference, J.D. Vance came along and said to Europe, you've messed up your continent. You're no longer defending European values. You've thrown it all to the dogs. He made a quip, of course, that the first Islamist state with a nuclear weapon would end up being the United Kingdom. And people said, oh, that's appalling, that's disgusting. And then some of us thought, well, he's got a point, doesn't he? How much of this sort of posturing over trade might be connected to the big wake-up call message coming from Washington, D.C. to the capitals around Europe that they're not doing enough to put their own country's interests first? Those are great questions, Alex. And I do think that President Trump is a big supporter of the transatlantic alliance. He likes Europe. He doesn't like the European Union. He does not like supranationalism. He doesn't like Eurofederalism. He believes that the European project is fundamentally against the American national interest. Actually, he views it as fundamentally undemocratic as well. And President Trump is a huge supporter of Brexit and self-determination. And so Trump is the first Eurosceptic American president. He is backing sovereignty and self-determination in Europe. That's a really great thing, actually, to see that. A president who really stands with those in Europe who want to be free of the shackles of the European Union. And I think the whole trade issue is a big part of that. Trump wants to break down the EU's protectionist barriers, to break down the common agricultural policy, for example, dearly beloved of French farmers. And he wants access for American farmers to European markets. And so he is actually taking on the protectionist mindset of the European Union. And the EU is the world's biggest protectionist racket. They pretend to stand for free trade. They are heavily protectionist. And Trump has thrown down the gauntlet. He actually does want to see genuine free and fair trade with Europe, but the European Union needs to lift those barriers and genuinely pursue free trade. That's what Trump wants to see ultimately. We know that we have the Donald coming over to pay us a visit in September. Who can forget that sort of obsequious, oh God, lick spittle, horrible, pulling that little invitation out of his pocket, pouring Donald's kiss and going, hi, would you like to come and sit in a royal carriage? It's pathetic. I mean, what we have is a president of the United States who really wants to see British interests upheld, and a prime minister who frankly doesn't seem to, and yet they seem to get along just fine. When Obama came to visit, oh, it was like the second coming, wasn't it? It was like the end times. Christ is back. Let's roll out the red carpet. Come and share your wisdom to the green benches. But Donald Trump's not going to be able to address our parliament, is he? Yeah, it's an absolute disgrace that President Trump has not been invited to address parliament. This is a very cynical and also cowardly move by Keir Starmer. I mean, firstly, you think it was deliberate? Oh, absolutely. It's 100% deliberate. There's no doubt about it. The state visit actually begins the day after the House of Commons rises, actually. And so this is undoubtedly... Goes on their hollybobs, it's all about, politics, really, here. And so Starmer fears members of his own Labour Party
acting in a rude, boorish manner, of course, when Trump, if Trump spoke to Parliament. Secondly, he fears the message that Trump would give, actually, to Parliament, which would be pro-Brexit, anti-EU, the defence of national sovereignty. I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump calls for freedom of speech in the UK. After all, a lot of people have been locked up for their tweets in Britain, strongly condemned, actually, by the Trump presidency. And so Starmer fears, of course, the message that Trump will give, all about sovereignty, self-determination, freedom, all of the things that should be in place in the UK and Europe, of course. And so I think we're dealing with an incredibly cowardly, far-left Labour government here, actually, and a lot of Labour cabinet ministers in the past have attacked and condemned Trump. Some very nasty comments. David Lammy, I think, has been the worst British foreign secretary, I think, of the modern era.
Does Trump know these things? Does he care?
I think he does. Most important, of course, for President Trump is meeting with the King and the visit to Windsor.
But is he aware, potentially, that essentially, I'm going to read between the lines of what you're intimating here, is Sir Keir Starmer is playing to his ego. He's saying, come along, sit in the royal carriage, go and meet the King, have your ego stroked, have the photos, the handshake. We're going to treat you like a god amongst us, at least on the surface. But you ain't going to be allowed to speak to us. You're not going to be allowed to voice your opinions. You're not going to address Parliament. We're going to do all we can to box you off, but actually we don't want to hear it. Is Trump cognisant of that?
Yeah, I think that there is going to be a lot of momentum building in Washington in the coming weeks for the president to be given the right to speak to Parliament, just as Barack Obama spoke to Parliament many years ago, and recently Emmanuel Macron, who knifed Britain in the back at every opportunity. He was given the opportunity to speak to Parliament. I do think that it's only a matter of time before President Trump says that he needs to speak to the British people in Parliament, and there'll be tremendous pressure on Keir Starmer to reverse course here. And I do think the decision not to invite President Trump is hugely insulting. It's disrespectful towards Britain's closest friend and ally, and I think it's an absolute disgrace. And I do think there's a very good chance that this will be reversed following pressure from the United States. I think that pressure is going to build. And I do think it's only a matter of time before President Trump himself actually directly addresses this issue.
One senses that a certain foreign policy analyst in the Heritage Foundation, Trump's favourite think tank, might be stirring that pot a bit and making sure that
I'll be calling
gets that message.
I'll be calling for President Trump to be invited to speak to Parliament, and as the leader of the free world, he should be given that opportunity. And Keir Starmer has, behaved, I think, in an absolutely appalling manner, should be ashamed of himself, frankly, for not issuing an invitation.
You're a tenacious man. I've known you a while, Niall, and what people might not know about this wonderful Brit who's over at the heart of operations in Washington, D.C., banging the drum for British interests, is that you might have had something to do with questioning whether or not Prince Harry has a right to continue to be a citizen of America by asking for whatever was on that visa application to be exposed. Now, this went to court.
Yes.
We all sat there thinking, is it going to happen? Is it going to be exposed that he admitted to taking drugs? And for whatever reason, they decided that this wasn't going to go into the public domain. But you haven't given up your fight, have you?
No, absolutely. The fight continues, and we're now urging the State Department, actually, to release Prince Harry's immigration records. And so we are increasingly confident that ultimately we will see the release of Prince Harry's immigration records. So that battle continues. This is a matter, I think, of real public interest in the United States. Did Prince Harry lie on his immigration application? That would be a criminal offence if he lied. And if he did lie, he would face either deportation or imprisonment in the United States. Do
you honestly think that could happen, though? Or would actually, when push comes to shove, someone like Donald Trump look at this and think, actually, that's going to spoil the special relationship? It's going to be an affront to the British people if we suddenly deport their prince?
I think that President Trump, of course, would leave that to the legal process. But anyone who actually lies on an immigration application would normally be subject to deportation or up to 5 years in prison in the United States. So the stakes are very, very high. No one is above the law, and I think the president would actually let the legal process work on that front. And if Harry was removed from the United States, I think that would be hugely popular among the American people. Of course, very few people in Britain would like to see Harry come back here. I suspect he would go to Canada or to France, but I don't think he would end up in the UK. I don't think there'd be any negative impact on the special relationship at all. In fact, Prince Harry is hugely unpopular in the United Kingdom among the British people. He's very unpopular within the royal family itself.
His dad's still our king, though.
Dad's still the king, but the reality is that Harry has treated his own father and his brother, William, in an absolutely horrible way, a horrible fashion. I don't think there's any path back for Prince Harry, and if he is removed from the United States, if he lied on his application, I think that would be actually applauded by most Americans, and of course many in Britain as well would believe that Harry should be subject to the rule of law wherever he is, and he has treated the royal family and the British monarchy in an absolutely disgraceful fashion. And also Meghan Markle has done the same as well. I mean, she's been an absolute disgrace. And so, but you know, the battle continues, and our view is that ultimately we will prevail. We will see the release of those records, and if Prince Harry has nothing to hide, he should support the release of those immigration records himself.
Ooh, well, I'll wait with bated breath to see what unfolds. Niall Gardiner, it's a blessing to have you here on a visit to the UK, but a blessing more that you're going to go back to Washington, DC and keep fighting the good fight and banging the drum for Britain over there, because how important it is indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alex.